So you YouTube junkies out there who hopefully subscribe to Leading Saints on YouTube. And by the way, if you're listening to this on a podcast feed, we actually do have a YouTube channel. You could be looking at me as you listen to this as well, if that's your jam. But if you're on YouTube a lot, you've probably seen a fantastic channel called 52 Churches in 52 Weeks, and it's hosted by David Boice. Now, David has a really unique journey where he was a Protestant believer, Christian out there, just interested in learning more about churches and the different churches that were out there. So he began to visit a church a week and would make a video about each church and share about it and say the things that stood out, what he liked, what he didn't like, and so forth. Well, in this journey, he happened to go to a Latter-day Saint church, of course, and took an unexpected turn when he joined the church and became a baptized member of the church. And he's recently moved to Utah, just down the street from me, and so we've connected now that he's local here. And I said, hey, David, I want to do a podcast interview with you, not necessarily talking about different churches you visited, but the leadership and the culture that you experienced in those different churches. And maybe as us as Latter-day Saint Zion builders and leaders, we can learn something from what makes a great church have positive culture from the minute you walk in the door. And so Dave and I jump into this conversation. I think you will enjoy it. Here's my interview with David Boice. Finally got David Boice in the studio here. You're a Utah now, right?
I am in Utah now. So I'm still, the other day, I was grocery shopping. And I thought, I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm so used to getting cheese curds. And
you gotta go to Beaver for cheese curds.
Okay, that's good to know, because I'm grocery shopping. I finally find a place with some cheese curds at just a local grocery store, and it's just it's like $4 for this little dinky amount.
Right, yeah.
Where it's this would be in $4 in Wisconsin, it would just be packed with cheese curds. So it's
let's up our game, Utah. Come on.
Yeah. So apparently I'm going to need to drive to Beaver now, or just wherever.
Beaver Creamery.
Okay.
So, and next time, because you go to St. George every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. So it's I don't know, an hour before St. George. So
okay.
And it is all the rage in Beaver, and they have all sorts of types of cheese curds. And if they're listening, they should sponsor Leading Saints, because I'm talking so much about that.
That'd be a great idea. I will stock up on this suggestion. So
speaking of traveling and roaming the world. Mm-hmm. If people aren't familiar with your background, what do you tell people?
Yeah. Oh boy, where do I start? I'm basically a wayfaring stranger. So one of the things that there's this one folk song back in the day, Wayfaring Stranger. So I always kind of adopted that, because I come from this Lutheran background. I had a falling out with that lifelong church, and then I'm just kind of in that spiritual but not religious camp for a little while, the nuns.
Mm-hmm.
And tried that out for a few months. And then it's just okay, I need to do something else, because I really feel like I'm leaning into more agnostic, atheist type of side. What do you do? Mm. So the idea that popped in my head was visit 52 churches in 52 weeks.
So before you go there, I want to know with this fallout with the Lutheran church, was it a cultural thing? Was it a theology thing? Or
I usually just say I believed in God, I just didn't feel God. There was this spiritual dryness that was going on.
So you go to the church, you do the things, but it was just sort of empty.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so I just stopped going more and more, I would just stop going. And oftentimes one of the things I just remember happening the most was hearing sermons from the pulpit, basically taking attacks, taking shots at other type of Lutheran churches that didn't fit within our doctrine. And there was a part where I just started to kind of it was just so small, but it would just start to snowball into other kind of things. I remember another time where a gentleman and his wife came in. I was serving as the usher. I give the bulletin to this husband and wife, and they take a look in the bulletin. They see that they can't receive communion for the service. There's a quiet argument between the gentleman and my pastor at the time. they storm out. And at the time, like right by me, and I'm just kind of like having this paint on smile as everyone else is coming in, you know, giving out the bulletins. And that just kind of snowballed where it's like, okay, we're inviting people into our house, but we're not inviting them to our table. So communion became this big kind of trigger in my head where it's like, why do we stop here? Why aren't we allowing visitors to receive, especially if they're believing, to take Jesus Christ with the body and the blood, you know? So over time, that just started to keep snowballing and snowballing and snowballing to the point where I just didn't feel like I was feeling Christ anymore anytime I would go to church. So after so long, like I just stopped going. And then it just became like, what do I do next?
And it was sort of snowballing into the agnostic world, which maybe he definitely didn't want to go there.
Right, right. So, and the idea of 52 churches in 52 weeks popped in my head where it's like, okay, if I'm going to leave this church I had gone to my entire life, where do you start over? And it's like, so I would have like this, there was another church I was kind of interested in. And it's like, I don't want to take another 20, 30 years at this church and go through the whole thing again where I just had this happen. I don't want it to happen again. Let's just try all of them. Let's try a new one each week. See what happens. And so it just became this spiritual adventure over time where it's like, okay, like it became an adventure. It became this Homer's Odyssey kind of thing, where it's like, I don't know what I'm going to walk into next. It's just going to be a completely different experience. And that started to kind of ignite my faith, and like it gave me purpose.
Yeah. So, and were you documenting it from the beginning on YouTube? Or?
So I started blogging.
Oh, okay.
So this started in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So the blogosphere, everybody was blogging back then.
Yeah, we had the leading LDS blog. Yep.
Yep. There you go. So, so at the time I was just writing about it.
Cool.
And over time, because I'm such a perfectionist, like it would take me forever to write just the way that I wanted to get it. So over time, after I completed this 10 years ago, I still found myself talking about it to anyone that I would meet, especially when it came to talking about religion or spirituality or Christ. And during the pandemic, I'm bored. I got no one else to talk to at the time. Hey, I'll take out my phone. I'll record. I'll share some takeaways from this experience so many years earlier, and I'll just post it on YouTube. And then when the pandemic started to drop, then I'm like, all right, well, maybe I can take this on the road again. Maybe I can actually document this in a way where you can actually tag along with me rather than me just writing about each church visit.
Yeah.
So,
and then was always the intention that, like you said, you had sort of lost your church, was always you're on this quest to find a church to join, or did it just sort of become fun and adventurous? Like, what's next, right?
That's a funny thing. So at first it was to find a new church, but after the first round, after visiting 52 churches, I never settled on one. Mm-hmm. I became this hybrid, this mix of like adopting what I liked most. So there was a certain extent where I would listen, and my Sunday mornings afterwards, like I never found a church community. So I would listen to sermons online instead. So I was listening to some of the best pastors and the best sermons I could find. So for a brief while, like I kind of veered into the neo-reformed camp.
Okay. Kind of not familiar.
Well, it's kind of like a rebrand, a refresh of Reformed theology, kind of the Calvinistic type of churches. So I would join some of these online communities because I wasn't finding a Reformed church in the area that I lived in. So I resorted to online sermons, audio, community Facebook groups. And one of the difficult things is I was seeing it was just an absolute bloodbath. in some of the comments because everyone was trying to up each other in terms of what they knew logically about scripture and theology, that it just completely just like ripped apart the theological, the brainy type of arguments I would hear, that it really just kind of was like, okay, you can have, all the sound, knowledgeable type of aspects when it comes to spirituality, but where's the heart? Where's the soul? And so for a very long time, like I was still kind of listening to the sermons. I was just getting a best of, but I never settled on a church community.
Yeah. So let me ask you, as you're going, like early on in this journey, and maybe as you started documenting on YouTube, like why church? Like, what was your understanding? Like, why did you need a church or a community? Like, why couldn't you just say, oh, I'm getting the good word here. I'm listening to a sermon. I got the Bible. Like, what if we were to go back in time and ask yourself then, what would you say? Like, why do you need a church?
That's a great question. I think there's a part where it was just so ingrained in my identity, self-identity.
Just what you do on a Sunday morning, right? You go to church. Yeah.
You go to church, you have this relationship with God, and that's just who you are. That is this aspect that is deep, soul deep inside. So for this brief while when I was that spiritual but not religious type of camp, there felt like something was tugging at me, where it's like, there's got to be more to this, because right now I just feel like I'm drifting. So I feel, especially with church, and maybe it could be a routine thing, every Sunday, you go and you hear the word and that resets you and starts you up for the week. There could be an aspect of that, but I think there was something just deeper, subconsciously deeper, that was there, that just was like, you need to keep going out. Because the thing with spirituality, and the thing when I would go to all these different churches, is like the Old Testament, and even with the Book of Mormon, it talks about, these adventures. Like, you go into the wilderness, you go into the wild unknown, not necessarily to find yourself, but also to find God. So by doing so, it ignited something within me. So I think there's an aspect that I was taken away from all the church visits I was doing. So when I finally visited the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because I never visited at the time what I would quote the Mormon church 10 years earlier. I didn't know about it. There was times where I think, and this was just deep in the recesses of my mind, I never connected point A to point B. I think when I heard Mormon, I was confusing it sometimes with Moravian.
Is that a faith, or what is that?
It's from what I understand, the Moravian church started in the Czech Republic. It was after the Protestant Reformation. So because of the word associations just sounding alike, I had researched a little bit into the Moravian church. It didn't sound interesting to me because it just sounded like another Protestant church. So Mormon church, to me, it sounded Protestant. So I'm like, well, I don't need to do another one of those. And so I just never knew. But then I remember a very close friend from high school. I basically made this big Facebook post, basically to give me my flowers. Hey, I went to Presbyterian and Catholic and Lutheran and United Methodist and Assemblies of God and Pentecostal and Scientology and Greek Orthodox and Wesleyan type of churches. I did all these church visits, and I had a friend it's like, why didn't you go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Got you.
And this was 2014. So at the time she mentioned Mormon church. And I'm like, what's so great about that? Because in the back of my head, I think I'm thinking Moravian.
So you just constantly dismiss it.
I would just dismiss it because I'm just like, well, it doesn't sound interesting. Because there was some Protestant churches I'd gone to where it's just like, there's nothing really, it doesn't seem much different than others that I've gone to. So,
So when was the moment where you finally leaned in to go to a Latter-day Saint church or Church of Jesus Christ?
So after I started the YouTube channel, I'm just documenting what happened to me years earlier. I'd done visits that I thought would be interesting, like Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church. I did a video on like the Church of Scientology, Christian Science. There was a book a number of years ago. I'm not sure if you remember, Heaven is for Real.
Oh yeah. They made a movie, isn't they?
Yep.
Yeah,
they made a movie, Greg Kinnear. So I went out to the middle of nowhere, Nebraska to go to that church just to kind of be like, okay, if heaven is for real, is this church for real? And just kind of understand what that was all about. So I would post these videos on YouTube, just kind of sharing, here's my experiences at these churches. And with the pandemic, basically all the restrictions lifting, I'm like, okay, there's been a huge shift in the country, even in the politics. What happens if I do this a second time? What if I do this on YouTube? And so I remember early on, I wanted to visit this AKA Mormon church just to appease my friend from years earlier to say, hey, I actually visited this church now. Now I checked it off. But I think with my first visit with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I meet the missionaries for the first time. There almost was like this kindred thing going on between me and them, because it's like, oh, you also go into the wild unknown, into this wilderness to find not just yourself, but to find God, but also to evangelize and talk about Jesus Christ. And to me, I'm just like, oh, this is interesting. I've never seen this at any other church. I'm so used to the mass marketing techniques to bring people in, have a great website, have the emails after the church visit to encourage the person to come back a second time. But here, there's personal touch. There's conversations. You're willing to sit down with me.
Interesting.
This is not the Moravian church.
Yeah. So before you go too much into your first experience in our church, because the way it ends is you do join our church, right? You are an active member, you're temple endowed, you're all the things now, right? Yeah. So I wanted, like, in the context of leading saints, I'm just curious more, like, obviously you were attending these churches for various reasons, but I'm curious if you were standing in front of a bunch of bishops or bishoprics, stake presidents, relief society presidents, elders quorum presidents, and they're just like, how do we make the church experience better, the culture better, what can we learn from you? So what principles came out over time as you were visiting these, as far as like what kept you there longer or intrigued you or made you feel better at home?
I think this is something where, because if you have grown up in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like, you don't realize some of the benefits because you don't know what else is out there. And I think the biggest thing that I was kind of taken away was just the communal type of experience. So this is where missionaries are just such an important and vital position when it comes to visitors and first-time visitors, especially because you have points of contact. If I would go into a church, because typically I would just go into all these churches blind. Early on, like, the best parameter for me that a church was healthy is just if I had at least two people who would say hi to me at the door. That was it. That was bare minimum. I went to one church where, like, no one said hi to me walking in, and I'm just like, this is terrible. Like, do you even know who's coming in, who's coming out? So, but with going to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, especially the first two times, it was members who would actually invite me where they're like, I feel like I've seen you before, but if not, like, I'd love for you to come sit with me and my husband. I'm like, what? That never happens to me at any of the other churches I would go to. And then I'd have another person who would come up to me and start talking with me. So, and obviously I think it may be a little bit different here in Utah compared to some of the other kind of states where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints isn't so such a covered as compared to the Protestants and the Catholic churches and the Bible Belt especially. There's advantages, I think, sometimes to be in those different kind of states. But I think one thing that really impressed me was just that communal aspect.
Yeah.
Because even with the ward that I later would join in Wisconsin, my first visit there, I feel like I met and shook hands with at least a third of the congregation there.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm just like, what is this? It was so communal as opposed to what I was so used to, where it was so much more focused on an individual relationship with Jesus Christ. But when I would see all these different kind of, mass marketing techniques or the things that would try and bring you back, it was much more about email or websites or just technology kind of taking over to continue that onboarding process. But like I never was really meeting anyone.
Yeah. Now that's interesting, as I've heard you articulate that, just that more the welcoming communal environment that our church was, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Because sometimes I make the assumption of like, because we're so geographic based, where, you go to, a Protestant church and it's sort of like they're looking to grow, generally speaking, and you could go to any church. You don't have to be there. Where in our faith tradition, there's a little more tension around, well, this is kind of where you live, so you're going to this ward, and it's a really complicated process if you want to go to a different ward, right? And so sometimes I worry that's like people will see individuals and just make the assumption, oh, well, they kind of have to be here, so there's no reason to go out of our way and welcome them, other than that we want to be good Christians, of course. Yeah. But so that's really encouraging for me to hear, and I'm sure there's people listening like, oh, my ward would have ignored them and whatever, and so you get all kinds. But that's encouraging to hear that you did feel that welcoming more in that context. Yeah,
because right now I think there is this breaking point going on right now. I feel like within churches, especially right now. I've been following a gentleman. His name is Ryan. I don't know if it's Burgess or Burge.
Burgess?
Not Burgess.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. But like I've been kind of following his work because he takes data, he takes analytics, and he's able to visualize this in all kinds of different graphs. And you see just the trajectory right now among the mainline Protestant churches, where it just keeps going just further and further down, and especially generational. Because right now with the baby boomer generation, I think he was saying it's like mainline Protestant churches. And that includes like United Methodists and Lutheran and all kind of the bigger Protestant type of churches that are kind of a little bit more traditional. It's like the majority of that church population is baby boomers. But you're seeing the millennials and the Gen X and the Gen Z, it just makes up like a fraction of that right now. And so there is a disconnect, I feel like generationally within mainline churches. But at the same point, you are starting to see this uptick compared to the mainline churches with evangelical, non-denominational type of churches. And I say non-denominational, even though some of those, they do have denominations, they just don't put that on the front door. They don't put those in the names anymore.
Because is non-denominational more marketable? Or
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Especially for younger generations. Because it's so much about comfort right now. And like I was doing a lot of research into churches in Minnesota recently with everything going on out there. And so you're seeing some of those non-denominational evangelical type of churches. Like I watched this one interview and the top word was comfort. We want you to be comfortable in this church. And as a result, more people are coming in. And there's a part where it's like, I think I struggled with it, is like, do I want to be comfortable within a church? Do I want to be a consumer, or do I want to be a doer? And I think there's a thing with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints where I'm just like, I see so much doing here. Even that first sacrament meeting afterwards, I was invited for a linger longer. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I'm like you guys got some weird words around here.
It's like it's the only It's only the beginning, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like right, sacrament meeting, elders quorum, linger longer. Like what is that? What are all these terms? But I just remember at the time, like there was this big event going on, and so we had a number of visitors that were there, including myself, and just like generationally, like I had a baby boomer visitor from out of state visiting with the missionaries, and they're all sharing stories about their missions. And just again, I hadn't seen that kind of generational conversations and dialogues within many churches like this. It was so different to me. So I think from that communal aspect, because the church does have such a focus on heritage and family and kind of having each other's back, even after I got baptized, the weird thing was like I got assigned to clean.
The building, the church building?
Cleaning assignment. Like I've never done this before. And like even that, it gave me ownership of my local ward, where it's like, I am going to do the best I possibly can to make sure every little hymn book is neatly tidied up inside the meeting house. I'm going to make sure all the carpets are as clean as possible. All the trashes are clean, and just, the bathrooms are clean and looking as pristine as possible. Even that gave me ownership as a doer, as opposed to just what I had always done is just sit down and leave, go home and watch football.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, definitely it was like that first minute that you walked in, there was a lot of data you were taking in naturally. It's just sort of that, first experience of, are people approaching me? Do I feel welcome here? Am I just wandering to a pew and sitting down and waiting?
It was a shock to me, because I never had people walking up to me as a visitor, just welcoming me and just being like, oh, what's your name? You know, have you been here before? Yeah. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And what else, just generally of other churches, did you see that maybe worked or didn't work, or any themes came up?
Okay. I had someone recently ask me, like, what, other than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, what was the second church?
Yeah, who came in second?
that was most effective? And I went to a Oneness Pentecostal church in Indianapolis. And at the time, like I was dating someone, so I actually had someone that came along.
Oh, wow. Because
typically, like, I get a much different reaction if I walk in solo as opposed to like if I have like a partner with me. And it's just, I think it's more of like an intimidation thing, where it's like some churches just don't know what to do
with the single guy walking in.
With a single guy walking in, bald, with the little, beard going on. But it's like if I have someone that I'm dating, it's a completely different conversation. So for the Oneness Pentecostal church, like I was dating someone for that visit, but like I remember, like even afterwards though, I had so many people like coming up to me after that because they were trying to bring us in, and the different part of the Oneness Pentecostal church is like it was all like the main course was like speaking in tongues. And like I never had seen, like I'd seen speaking in tongues, but I hadn't seen an entire church doing it all at once.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was extremely different to me. So me and my date, like, we're not used to this. Like we'll just whisper a prayer to each other, and that way it'll be kind of a little less different. But even like afterwards, like I had a number of like couples coming up to us and just trying to get to know us. The interesting thing with Oneness Pentecostalism is they are considered not the typical Christianity, because they don't believe in the Trinity. They believe in the oneness of God, almost like the Godhead. So oftentimes they get from the more kind of, attacking type of Christians, like they don't get to join the club, Yeah,
we know the feeling, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I always kind of thought that was a little bit interesting because is it because they're not in the club that they are more welcoming to first-time visitors? So that was just such a different kind of experience there.
Yeah. And that's helpful just to be aware of maybe making that extra effort for that single individual that walks in, because it is, I don't know, maybe because I'm in the context of, I'm with my wife and kids, so it's sort of maybe easier to make that connection family to family rather than family to person. I don't know why, but yeah, that's interesting. And just you saying
the guard is down.
Yeah, for sure.
Because as a single guy, it's like, are you single or you're not?
Yeah.
Like, are you married or you're not? Like,
you brought a person who trusts you.
Yeah.
To some extent. So you must be trustworthy.
You fit more within the norms.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Anything about just the way the meetings were run, or, the way it was preached, or I assume the vast majority, I mean, when you saw our tradition of like just, everyday lay members giving talks or sermons, that's often, atypical, but anything out just about the structure of the meetings you saw that stood out?
I don't know about structure so much. I do remember it was just so different to have communion so early on.
For us?
Yeah.
To do it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because like with the Catholic churches, like that's the main event. What I really, the holy envy I had of the holy envy I had of the Roman Catholic Church was like they involve like all the senses.
Yeah.
Like you see just this beautiful like basilica or cathedral, or just the gold and how they arrange everything inside with the interior. Then they'd have like the incense. So even like your nose would get involved in the worship. You would have, even with the kneelers, like, have you been on Catholic kneelers before?
Like the things that fold down,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Like even that, like it'd hurt my knees because I wasn't used to it. So you even get like a sense of touch involved in the worship of Mass. And then also, especially Latin Mass. I enjoyed Latin Mass because you hear this almost like this religious language, and it was like you get your ears involved in it too. The last thing though is taste. When it comes to taking from the cup with the body and the blood, and if you're not a member, you can't do that. So like I learned, especially in my Catholic videos. Like there's one video where I'm talking about like, I want to receive communion, and like, I don't know if I need a brown paper bag it in or what. But I remember like my Roman Catholic brothers and sisters in Christ are like, oh no, that's not how we do things.
Yeah. But
they didn't mention, it's like, oh, you can go up and do this and just get a blessing.
Oh, I see.
So that I would do much more when I would visit the Roman Catholic churches. But I think when it came to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to have sacraments so early on, that was very different to me. And not even counting just the water instead of grape juice or wine that I was so accustomed to. Like, because I always had envisioned water with baptism. So it took me a very long time to get used to that when I started, the first times I would attend a sacrament meeting. But like from a structure standpoint, even from a leadership standpoint, one thing I would also try to observe would just be seating arrangements. Because you'd have the bishopric up front facing out to the congregation and also the speakers. And I'm just like, they're looking right at me.
Yeah.
Like that was different.
Yeah.
I'd looked into how other churches would kind of set up their seating. So there were a few churches that would try and do, like typically you see everyone sits a particular way towards the pulpit, and then the pastor looks back, but typically the pastor may be seated on the side. You don't actually have any direct eye contact. So I was started to see other churches where they would try to implement what was called the round, where you'd have the altar in the center, and then you'd kind of have like a seating around that. There's a few churches that would start to do that. But even with the bishopric just looking straight at you, like even for me, I was just like, that's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's interesting because that's all we know. That's just the way it's always been done.
Yeah. But it's like, who are these guys sitting up there? Like, I didn't know for early on.
Yeah. Yeah. Was the, so was it a typical sacrament meeting, the first one you went to, where you had a couple speakers that were, talked, and was that surprising to you not to have like more of a sermon from a pastor figure, or?
Right. Okay, if you want to laugh, the biggest thing that I was so impressed with is the kids crying.
Oh yeah.
And you'd have the first sacrament meeting I went to was a husband and wife that gave the talks. And this was right after sacrament. Again, I'm just like, that was early. Like, what happens now? And they get up there. I remember the first speaker, he was trying to do this parallel of Anakin Skywalker. And I'm like, oh, all right, a little bit of a nerdy kind of thing. Because again, it's not a pastor. Okay, this is different. But the fact that he was able to give his entire talk and then his wife right after that, and there were so many families around me with the kids, playing with their toys and crying and just getting, restless and stuff like that. I'm just like, how are you able to do this?
Because most churches will separate children to kind of their primary right away, right?
Right. And like a lot of the evangelical type of churches, like you walk in and then the kids go straight to their kids' church. Mom and dad, they'll go straight into the adult church. The mainline Christian churches, like, I hate to say it, but it's like I did not see much youth in those traditional mainline Protestant churches. You can still get, the cries and the whimpers with the Roman Catholic Church because they still keep families together. Messianic Jews, I went to one of their services and they keep the families together. But there was a certain extent too where I'm just kind of like, this is kind of impressive, where the families are still together during an actual worship service because it's modeling to the kids.
Yeah.
It's an example. And you're starting to see that go away in that evangelical Protestant circle right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And I think just those nonverbal cues are just the way you're sitting and, that's a reverent space and you kind of grow up in that, right?
And I think some evangelical churches I've seen, like, I think they're starting to get a little bit of a sense of that because I am starting to see a few of the churches I would go to, 2 or 3, where some families, like, they would keep their kids with them for the music portion. And then as soon as the sermon would start, then, like, all right, it's off to kids' church for that. Yeah. But that's kind of the hope that I see just with the trajectory of evangelical churches from what I've witnessed.
So I'm curious. So typically most services will have communion as the very last thing you do?
Mainline Christian churches, mainly, yes. The evangelical churches now,
they're kind of once a month type of thing, right? Like
once a month. It's become so much more rare. I was talking to a pastor, especially after going to Mark Driscoll's church. I did a video on that. There was a lot of curiosity about that. Mormon attends an anti-Mormon church.
Yeah.
And it was very bizarre because it was the third time I had seen communion offered on a side table where it was almost kind of like when you're leaving, you can grab sacrament almost before you get in the car.
Yeah.
Kind of like a personal kind of thing, but you wouldn't have it as a community. Communion as a community.
Yeah.
You do it yourself.
Wow. Interesting.
And there was one church before I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was attending on Wednesday nights, kind of like my last try to join an evangelical community. And I'd signed up, through the email way that they wanted to have things set up, and I'd never got an answer back. But even then, I remember they'd have the side communion as well, just with one of the PowerPoint slides saying, "Hey, if you want communion, we got
interesting.
We got the tray in the back." So,
and in the Catholic tradition, I mean, it's if you're having mass, communion's going to be part of it.
That is the thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Similar question going back to before you were aware of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, why communion? For you, was that sort of a big thing? Would it be a deal breaker if you went to a church and they just sort of skirted past it?
Yeah. So from the Lutheran church I came from, communion was a big thing. Now, again, this was mainline Protestant type of churches. The evangelical churches, you don't have to go through, from what I've seen anyway, the amount of classes, because I'd have to study a small catechism. And for me, it was 3 years of study with a pastor. So we'd have our classroom. Early on, it started maybe one night a week. And then eventually 7th and 8th grade, we'd do it like 2 times a week. So we were constantly learning about the history of the Lutheran Church, Martin Luther, the importance of communion. I remember even just like the little, like, I don't even know what they call them now, scarves or something like that. Like you'd have different colors per the church liturgy season. So you'd have to learn about that. And then at the end, you'd basically kind of like be tested and quizzed in front of the church. For us, it was a Thursday night, just to basically have the pastor ask the class questions, and then you would have to be able to answer everything. And you'd obviously be prepped, because we'd be studying this for months beforehand with the examination. So communion was a big deal to me. So when I started to kind of see that, where it's like we're not inviting visitors, like, again, that was kind of like a breaking point for me, because it just started for me, I started to ask questions about that. And again, like even with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where I was given communion for the first time, I'm like, okay, I'm welcome at the table. I'm welcome to dinner here. So that was refreshing to see. But yeah, it to me, like communion was very, very important, because it was like right before the crucifixion. It was the deal to commune with Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So, and sort of secondary to that was sort of this community nod, like you're welcome here.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the communion, which we all agree is important, and you can have some.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's where the communion snack bar, if you will, is kind of what I nicknamed it. It's like, okay, you're giving it freely to anyone, but there's very little reverence here. It's not a community type of activity. It's just an afterthought. It's an option.
Yeah.
And I was wrestling with that, where it's like, is it good to have an option if there's no community involved? And this is things that you never hear about in, the typical kind of theological arguments that you often, see online and stuff like that. It's just like, what do you do with this?
Yeah. And yeah, this is helpful, because you mentioned that your first time you're sort of like, oh, they're doing communion early or sacrament early, where usually it's the main event. But this is sort of our way of showing it, because we wanted to be the main event. And so it's like, let's do it first. Let's, we've sort of got everybody settled, sing a song or two. Now let's get to business of why we're here, you know? And so that's, and we definitely have I'm realizing a deeper tradition, for that communion, Last Supper sacrament experience. I mean, we're a very ordinance focused people, obviously, covenant type of people, and we see, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but like we see it, like it's more as a covenant, like there's a covenant being renewed, a relationship being renewed, where do you feel like other churches are maybe they're more doing it as sort of like, well, Jesus asked us to do this, let's remember him and commune with him, or any thoughts there?
That opens up some thoughts. Because again, with the Roman Catholic Church, it is the main event, but even like the symbolism, like
they're so symbolic, right? Yeah.
Well, the crucifixion is everywhere. So, like, I'm almost kind of like the Roman Catholic Church. One thing, the oddest interview I heard, it was a movie actor, and he was kind of talking about how with Latin Mass, it almost is kind of like a play. It is like a lot of acting when it comes to the clergy up there. And so to a certain extent, it is kind of like this dramatization leading up to the Last Supper. But with the Protestant churches, like you don't see the crucifixion at almost any church. You'll see the cross. Right. And that's supposed to represent kind of that resurrection. Like Jesus is off the cross now. We are saved. And I think with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like the symbolism is the Christus, Jesus Christ, you know? And that was one of the biggest things I was early on as I was like investigating the church, where it's like, oh, this is interesting. The symbolism is different because you don't have the cross, you don't have the crucifixion, you have Jesus Christ reaching out and almost like this ascension, because you need the crucifixion, you need the resurrection, but you also need the ascension. So it's almost like a restored gospel, a restored church that puts focus on the ascension. And what happens after communion is imperative as well. The timing of sacrament was interesting because, yes, we are recognizing this, we are communing, we are renewing our ordinances, but then now we really kick things off. Now we're in celebration mode. Now, like, it's a whole new game as opposed to other churches where it's like, okay, communion, now we're done.
Yeah.
That's a service.
Yeah. At home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. That's great. That's great. It's interesting. You mentioned like a lot of churches will do make sure you leave your email, or they'll sort of reach out to you, put you on the email list, and hopefully, prod you back to join them again.
It's a lot of gift giving.
Oh, okay.
So I would collect, because a lot of the evangelical churches, like there's a welcome desk. So, get the email address and you can get like a bag of goodies. And I have seen so many different gift bags. The majority is coffee mugs with the logo of the church on there. I've also have gotten popcorn. I've gotten soap to wash away your sins, kind of like idea.
Like, okay.
Trail mix, Starbucks gift cards, coupons for their in-church coffee bookstore kind of thing. A few churches gave me, like the bigger evangelical churches like Elevation Church with Stephen Furtick and Saddleback Church. Then it was pastored by Rick Warren. They actually would give free Bibles if you requested it, which I'm like, well, perfect. Like that's kind of what you want if you are starting from that perspective. Trying to think of some other weird ones I've gotten. Christian Science gave me their whole 700-page key in scripture or health and science. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
It's
right
like
now.
their book.
Their
right?
book.
Jump in. Type of thing.
Like there's one short that I posted. I went to this one church in Wisconsin. It was for deer hunters. The night before deer hunting season, you'd come in as a church body wearing your hunting gear with the blaze orange or the camo. So they would do raffle tickets. And so I remember I put in a few raffle tickets for a Reggie White rookie card.
Wow.
And then I also put one in just because at the time, like I'm a Protestant. And so they had like a 6-pack of beer. So I'm like, well,
to raffle off?
Yeah, to raffle off. So I'm like, oh, this would be funny if I actually win this. So I think I put like one ticket in there, hoping I would get the Reggie White rookie card, and my number gets drawn for the 6-pack of beer. So that was like the wildest.
That's funny.
Take home item I got from a church.
Nice.
But, like the more mainline churches, like I remember I got like some postcards and stuff like that. But typically like the evangelical mega churches, like it's very structured, it's very organized. They have someone at a welcome desk because if you want information, get you back, get your email address, like, hey, give us your email, we will give you this gift bag, almost like an exchange, so to speak. Yeah.
So it's not like that. I mean, they're trying to be welcoming, which I'm sure that works to a large extent. But
and the evangelical churches, it does work. Like they would, if it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it.
Right. But your experience was more, you wanted, like, it was the organic welcoming that kind of felt better, right? Not because someone was at a desk that said welcome next to it.
The thing with my whole church experiment is like I can go to all these different churches and see what are the practices that a lot of these churches are doing? And a lot of it would just kind of be a repeat, a pattern, especially the coffee mugs.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it wasn't just the missionaries, it was the church members as well, where there was this reaching out
Mm-hmm.
that I just wasn't seeing anywhere else. And I feel like sometimes, especially with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because there is no pastor, there is no specific, like there's leadership, obviously, with the bishopric and the bishop, but like the church, it's a body. And I often felt like if you wanted any kind of answer, especially as I was kind of playing around with some other evangelical churches, I was thinking of becoming a member, but just never pulled the trigger on. It's like, well, I have to go through the pastor. And the pastor, like, he has hundreds of other people that want to talk to him. Like, I don't need to be another burden on him. So
yeah, interesting. All right, so if designing church were up to you in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like how would you do it?
It's tough to.
I mean, maybe we should do the sacrament at the end, or I don't know. Is there?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I feel like it actually is a good idea to put the sacrament in the beginning, and kind of maybe have more enthusiasm after sacrament. I would love to see maybe like a hymn afterwards, where it's a hymn to build up excitement, especially in the cadence of the song. Like I've sometimes with the hymns, it can be very slow. It can be very somber.
Especially a sacrament hymn.
Especially for a sacrament hymn. But sometimes I feel like after going to so many churches where it's like, if there is a hymn to shout Hosanna, to shout praises, hey, he has risen. Now we can really, build Zion here. I think that would be kind of the biggest thing that I would change if I ever had a say.
Right. All right. What else?
I think sometimes it also helps. And I think because we're sitting all the time, and other type of churches, hey, you get up, you sit down, all that. So I feel like after sacrament, if you do have this upbeat type of praise, like this is the time to get up, stretch your legs, but more so like this is how, this is the good stuff.
Yeah.
He's here.
Good. That's awesome.
Our sins are forgiven.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate. Who's talking next?
Yep. So more energy after sacrament, maybe more up and down. Anything else?
I think that's kind of the big one.
Okay.
There was one interesting, I went to the Asbury outpouring or Asbury revival. That was a big deal in evangelical circles. I want to say in 2023, I believe it was 2022, maybe. And it was like this thing where people were coming all over to this college,
I remember this. Yeah.
Asbury University in Kentucky. And I remember one thing I thought was interesting about their setup is like they almost had like kind of like this railing for people, almost kind of like Catholic churches, where you kind of have like these pillows to kneel down at the altar. But for this, it was used for praying. So I don't know how that would ever fit within the church, especially when it comes to a sacrament meeting. But I just remember just that really had this passion, this spirit-filled type of explosion for people that would go up there and just have like a moment to just pray at this railing at the altar, just the action. So I think anytime that there is action involved within a church movement, I think that always helps because you are making the choice to move forward. That's why I love progressive temples. With the Manti, Utah temple, this weekend I'm going to go to the Logan, Utah temple.
Oh, cool.
Just went to the Los Angeles, California temple.
Awesome.
The progressive, going from
room to room,
room to room.
Yeah.
Like you are actually stepping forward. You actually are moving, and it's your choice.
Yeah.
There's something about that.
That's cool. Yeah, and that's the point I want to bring up is we sort of bifurcated our worship a little bit into there, because there's things in the temple we do that maybe some, maybe Catholics are very symbolic in their church service, but we're really symbolic in our temple service. So it's like we still have those ingredients. We just maybe they manifest differently, right? Yeah. Where because to me, it's like, yeah, it'd be cool to have a place where, you can go to a Catholic church most days and go sit and ponder, pray and meditate, in their pews. But it's like, yeah, we have that too, just in the temple, right? So if you need a place to have a good, solid grounding prayer, like, well, go to the temple type of thing, right? And I know it's different and not everybody can just walk in and do that, but
right.
But those traditions are there, and I'm glad that we have different ways of doing that, right? That we're not just going to a sacrament meeting in the temple on a Wednesday rather than a Sunday.
Different avenues.
Yeah, for sure. What has the temple experience? It's been a couple of months now, right, since you've been endowed and been actively, attending the temple. Any reflections there? I'm sure you've shared many on your channel, but
one of the things, especially when I was first doing temple open houses. Mm-hmm. Like it was like I was just so my eyes were so wide especially walking out, because it was just completely different and novel and new to me. But like there was symbolism that was involved where it's like, oh, there's something so much deeper in this that I'm just trying to extract that I'm not seeing anywhere else. It was just so fascinating to me. And one of the worries I have now, because my goal right now is like, eventually I'm going to do like a 52 temples in 52 weeks.
Like separate YouTube channel. Focused on the temple. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Right now, I'm still going weekly, but it's more so to get comfortable. But even then, it's like, I feel like when I did my first proxy baptisms, like, oh man, I was so nervous doing that the first time. So nervous doing that the second time. But the third time, okay, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And then when it came to endowments, first time, like, all right, like I'm comfortable, but there's a lot of unknowns. Second time, more nervous than I thought I'd be. Third time, all right, I got this. Uh-huh. So there is this comfort level that I'm gaining more confidence each time that I go. So even yesterday, like I went yesterday and went by myself, just like, can I do this by myself? Mm-hmm. Do I need someone with me all the time? I can't keep doing that. And walked out. Hey, that was great. So it's a continual like comfort level thing, but I feel like I'm a little bit different. Just because like I always walk out with these different kind of themes that I just like latch onto.
Yeah.
And like no one else is talking about it. And I feel like it's just mainly more so from my different Protestant background, that because there's so many things with the church that I just don't know yet. Like I've been a member now for close to 2 years and I still am like, there's so many different things I'm pulling from. And yet at the same point, there's a beauty to that because I don't have this point of reference, so to speak. I'm seeing things in a new kind of way that's a little bit from a different angle. So like, for instance, I recently, with the Los Angeles, California temple, my friend was mentioning that the Angel Moroni statue atop of it, it's different than any other because it's supposed to be based around the time frame of the Book of Mormon time period, with Moroni, with kind of this Mayan type of clothing, the golden plates. And later on, like we drove by the Hollywood Bowl because I want to get some pictures of, the Hollywood Hills. And just, it just kind of hit me where it's like, man, driving by the Hollywood Bowl, like it's by the same sculptor who did the Oscar trophy.
Oh, really?
So it's like, oh, this is Hollywood's golden type of statue. I go to the temple, I see this Moroni statue all in gold, and just the parallels between that.
Yeah,
because
that's interesting.
with the Los Angeles, California temple being built, it was kind of like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints basically being like, hey, we are permanent. We are not some pioneer church just in Utah. We are expanding.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to provide this beacon, this light right here in the middle of Hollywood. And that golden statue of Moroni, like the way it's positioned, it's like he is trumpet towards the heavens. It is a hearkening for Jesus Christ. And then you look at Hollywood's golden trophy, you know, it's self-achievement. It's kind of like this. It's to itself. It's very me. So it's one of those things where it's like, as I go to these different temples, especially as my plan is to do 52 temples in 52 weeks, like, what is the story behind the city that these temples are being built? And then also, what happens when the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints kind of becomes this light within that city, especially within the new temples, especially with so many having been built within the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Great contrast there in that part of the world. Obviously, we'll put all the links to your channels and things. I'm excited to follow you through this 52 temples, and I think every Latter-day Saint sort of fantasizes about doing something similar, you know, to go see as many temples as possible. Last question I have for you is, I want to go back to that, you know, when you had that falling out, as you describe it, with your Lutheran church, and the way you described that. I know that there's many individuals in the audience listening being like, oh, that's exactly how I feel like in the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, right? I've sort of been through the grind long enough. I'm just sort of painting on a smile and doing it. Or they may be cynical about your experience, be like, oh, give it time, David. You'll get worn down, and, you know, just have to paint that smile on your face one more time. So, like, in a parallel universe where you're where you're standing in a Latter-day Saint church having the falling out, like, what encouragement could you give, or like, how do you keep it fresh, or how do you avoid when the church, you're just wondering, this church just isn't working for me? Like, what comes to mind?
Breathe.
That's a great
breathe.
Yeah.
I think we all go through those stretches of spiritual dryness.
Yeah.
And for me, the thing that did help out was to go out into that wild unknown that I was talking about earlier. And I don't think necessarily, because I think we all have, especially in today with social media and the algorithms, because if you look up one pro LDS type of thing on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, the next thing that's going to pull up is going to be something anti, and it's going to challenge you. And there is this kind of, not this spiritual battle, but like this social media battle. And on top of that, you also have the culture wars. And it's very easy to substitute spirituality for CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or anything like that that's on there. So there's this very tricky balance going on in the world right now. So I think when it comes to spiritual dryness, I think it really kind of stems down to how can you personally freshen things up? And for me, it was like traveling. It was going on a new adventure. And maybe that could be something where it's like, go to a different temple in Arizona, or drive out to Wyoming, go out to Idaho, do something wild. If you're on vacation, make it a point to go to the temple. Because sometimes, like, if you, even like in relationships or marriages, sometimes you just need to do something different. You need to go on, a new honeymoon, or like a vacation to Cancun or something like that, freshen things up. So I think there is because there is love involved in that kind of relationship. And there's also a love and a spirituality with the church. So I don't think it's a bad idea to, if you're going to go on some kind of vacation, make it a point to go to the temple, make it a point to go to that meeting house in a different part of the world to just see if maybe things can freshen up. That's, to me, that helped me. And I think the one thing I'm excited with the 52 temples in 52 weeks is like, okay, I can kind of show viewers, like, here's what it looks like around here. Here's the history. but also maybe to just kind of see like, hey, you can do this too. It doesn't just need to be me.